are different. California has the highest poverty rate at 23.8%, while Texas rate has declined to 16%. So what does that mean? What can we take from those stats?
Let's talk to somebody who's lived in both states. Chuck DeVore is the vice president for the policy, for policy at the Texas Public Policy Foundation. He is also a former California lawmaker and the author of the Texas Model Book. Chuck, thank you very much for joining us today.
Thank you for having me.
Okay, so you know we're going to put up another graphic that shows folks the highest taxes in America at the state level. California is 4th, Texas is 45th. The conventional wisdom would be if you're paying higher taxes, you would have lower poverty in that state, but it's exactly the opposite.
It is exactly the opposite. In fact, what we're seeing with this new poverty measure that looks into both the cost of living and the value of government services as well as taxes is we're seeing that proportionately California has 45% more people in poverty than does Texas, and at the same time they tax 42% more of their state's income than does Texas.
So Chuck, is what you're concluding, the obvious conclusion would be when the taxes get high, the taxpayers go somewhere else. The achievers decide, I worked hard for my money, I'd like to keep it and give it to the people I want and buy the things I need.
Well, absolutely, and it's not just the taxes, it's the red tape, it's the regulation. And what we see in California is kind of the blueprint for the future course of America. If you look at where America is heading now, it's epitomized by California. Texas offers an alternative model, a model of freedom and liberty, and I think this is pointed out by the fact, another interesting statistic, that in 2011, for the first time in history, the per capita output of Texans surpassed that of California, and it grew in 2012. In other words, Texans are now more productive in producing goods and services than California, and California has Hollywood and Silicon Valley. I mean, something isn't working in California, and it's big government.
Well, they may have Silicon Valley and they may have Hollywood, but they've got higher taxes and they've got higher poverty. No wonder so many people are going to Texas, including you.
The number one destination state for Californians to leave is Texas.
Why would they hire and elect Governor Brown? He's not as liberal as he once was, but he's a liberal guy.
Well, and the sad thing for California is that relative to the folks in the legislature, Governor Brown is somewhat of a moderate. But California really needs to change its direction. In fact, Governor Brown was commenting on this poverty report and said just yesterday that, well, we have high poverty because California is so attractive and so many people want to move here. We're a magnet state. But if you look at the census data, it's the opposite. California is losing hundreds of thousands of people who are moving out of California and moving to places like Texas, where you have lower taxes, less red tape, and more liberty.
Sure, California should be taking that money and helping those people get jobs, and it's not working. Chuck DeVore, we thank you very much for joining us. He's at the Texas